The space was said to be weird, and when the four girls saw it, they said so as well. It was not the missing ceiling tiles or the silent creeping of nature making its way inside the room that made it weird, nor was it the two empty beds, stained and rusted, that lay unaligned against the wall that made it feel this way. There was, however, something unusual about the faint yellowish buzz emitted by a single light bulb that hung from the ceiling. It flickered ever so slightly, trembling with fear, anxiously awaiting. But the girls were no strangers to the abandoned rooms of the orphanage. The girls were orphans, and it was not uncommon for them to encounter dark, abandoned places within the old, weary building. It was a game they played, exploring the building that was both home and haunted. The lively green of their school uniforms contrasted with the decaying brown that stained in splatters on the walls and ceiling and floor. Naomi walked inside. "Weird," she said, inspecting the scene around her. Mia followed. "I heard that 2 years ago someone disappeared in this room, and the girl hasn't spoken since." "How can you know she hasn't spoken if she disappeared?" said Casey, the youngest. "There were 2 girls, one disappeared, the other hasn't said a word since," corrected Violet. "What happened to her?" insisted Casey. "Don't you know what disappeared means? No one knows what happened to her," said Mia. "I meant, what happened to the sister?" Darkness unveiled its icy hand, silencing Casey. Only Naomi's face glistened in the dark, devilishly lit by her flashlight. "I'll tell you what happened," she said. "There were 3 sisters." "I thought you said 2, interrupted Casey. "Shush! Let her finish," scolded Violet. "She's scared," teased Mia. "As I was saying," continued Naomi, "there were 3 sisters who lived in the woods. They played in the dark and sang by the moon. The state learned of this, and when they went to visit their parents, they found out they had none. So they brought them to the orphanage. This orphanage," added Mia. Naomi laid the flashlight on the floor, illuminating the chains that went from the beds to the wall. She continued. "They were not nice girls, you know. They caused all kinds of trouble. Until finally, they locked them in this room. They chained them. That's the only way they could control them." Laughter cut through the silence, but Casey did not smile. "I feel weird. Can we leave now?" she said. "Leave?" Naomi asked. "We're spending the night here." The wind moaned lightly. On the floor, the girls formed a circle, and at its heart, Naomi placed a homemade Ouija board, placing the planchette on the carved wood. She began. "One escaped, one disappeared. One got her fingers sheared. Talk to us, spirits. Tell us how she disappeared." "What?" cried Casey. "Fingers sheared? What does that even mean?" asked Violet. "We're going to find out tonight," said Naomi. "I don't like this," said Casey. "Are you scared?" asked Violet. "She's a little baby," taunted Mia. "Is there anyone here with us?" asked Naomi. The wind howled, light and fresh, like a violin. It pushed the girl's fingers, or perhaps it was pushing the planchette. "Yes," said Mia. "Stop!" Casey jerked back her hand, tears forming at the corner of her eyes. She got on her feet and said, "You guys are so weird. I'm gonna tell Miss Grendel," she sobbed. and ran out of the room into the comforting darkness, leaving behind the planchette, the girls, the chains, and the doorway smothered by locks. "Pussy," said Naomi. "She's not gonna tell anyone," said Violet. They all laughed, but the silence fell heavily, and the weight soon became uncomfortable. "That's weird," said Mia. "Why would they put the locks inside the door?" The wind answered in a low and heavy moan. It dragged, painfully slow, yet persistent, like a bow pushing against the strings of a cello, like someone trying to crawl its way in. "What is that?" asked Mia. "Casey?" asked Naomi. "This isn't funny." The wind persisted. Violet reached towards the door. She closed it shut and pressed her body against it. Only then did she dare breathe. "What are you doing, Violet?" asked Naomi. "I felt so weird, I had to close it." A pale Mia looked at Naomi. "You aren't scared, are you?" asked Naomi. "No," lied Violet. The girls resumed their positions, this time getting closer. "It was really funny," said Mia. "You moving the planchette, I mean." The silence grew louder. The wind rushed inside, seeping through the gaps of the door. "It wasn't you?" said Naomi. "No," said Mia. "It was Violet, right? I didn't..." The planchette moved. Violet's eyes were wide, looking at the hollowed piece of wood, moving on its own from L to O and on to the rest of the letters. "Lock the door," read Mia. The light flickered, making the room barely visible. If not for the flashlight, they wouldn't have seen the doorknob turning ever so slowly. The three girls launched themselves towards the door. Naomi grabbed the doorknob while the other girls troubled themselves with the many locks, and found, much to their dismay, that they could only operate 3 flimsy sliding locks, one of which was held in place by a single screw. "Casey?" said Naomi. "Casey, if this is you, it's not funny." There was no time for a response, only the sound of a choked gasp. Underneath the door, reaching in like snakes, 5 fingers slithered their way inside, moving independently, unorganized, as if they were worms looking for a bite. The wind moaned loudly in reply. Then it whispered in a child's voice. "Open the door," it said. "Open the door, please. I'm scared." "That's not Casey," said a terrified Mia. "No shit," replied Naomi. "Open the door, please," it insisted, pressing on the security of the locks. "Open the door." The girls fell back, and there they remained, the pupils of their eyes dilated like pools of blood on ice, watching the first lock give way. The lower corner of the door bent in. It looked weird. The limbs slithered around like a limp noodle in boiling water, each finger with a mind of their own, and dragged the wrist and arm lifeless behind it. It caressed the door, bloody fingers searching for the locks. Naomi pushed her body against the door in an attempt to keep the door shut. Violet followed. Mia remained paralyzed, following blankly the skinned finger that opened the second lock, and then the third. The door gave in for a moment, and then it shut back in place. Violet took a step back. "Will you open the door, please?" The wind said softly, "I promise I'll be good. Please," it cried, and the door opened wide into unnatural darkness, an open window to an endless abyss. Slithering hungrily, an arm plopped out, slumping heavily on the floor. Then another arm followed, clumsily finding its way between the wall and the floor, like vines growing unnaturally long. Then came a head, small and childlike. Chunks of hair still held on to an otherwise skinless head. No eyes, no nose, no lips, yet teeth. Many, many teeth. Its tongue twisted in the air. Weirdly, it seemed to be smiling. Naomi screamed just as the arms reached her, just as the fingers grabbed onto her, digging its nails into her arm like fish hooks. They pulled her into the darkness. There was silence. Moments later, the abyss spit her back out to the horror of the two remaining girls. The image of Naomi, or what was left of her, was burned into the eyelids of the two young girls. And there it remained, even after the arms slithered inside and pulled the last pieces of their friend. She was never seen again. As for Violet and Mia, well, who knows? They haven't said a word.